Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Haifa Abafi, PhD student at Qazi Mubah University, with Dr. Halima bin Zouf, Doctor of the same university. First of all, I would like to say that we are really appreciate giving us this opportunity to share our topics in the first international conference on the reality of the linguistic policy in the world. And the topic we're going to tackle today is about the representation of culture in the FL Algerian textbooks. So, this study will move forward with the following points, starting with an introduction, objectives of the study, research questions, reviewing the literature, methodology, results and discussion, and the last point will be the conclusion. Let's start with some points related to the background of this topic. Language research increasingly acknowledges the cultural dimensions of language teaching. Moreover, it is broadly accepted among teachers that to be able to communicate appropriately in a language, mainly here the English language, learners have to acquire the rules of language use and the cultural context within which the language is spoken. Learning cultural aspects can therefore be considered as one of the central aims of both second and foreign language education in the 21st century, according to Crash. However, and despite the recognition of the importance of culture for successful communication, may still a gap between academics and practitioners in the sense that foreign language teachers and learners seem hesitant to integrate cultural theories into pedagogical practice. Let's move on to the objectives of this study. The present study aims at exploring the way culture is represented in the Algerian textbooks. The second point is investigating the role of international and national culture in the English language acquisition. For these objectives, we have raised these two questions. The first question: how culture is represented in the English Algerian textbooks? The second question: which role does the culture represented in the Algerian textbooks play in acquiring the English language? Moving on to reviewing the literature. Here, it is a necessity to know the definition of culture, because we know that culture is defined by many linguists and scholars in many ways. For example, here, it was defined by Richards and Schmidt in 2002 in their Dictionary of Language Teaching and Applied Linguistics as follows: a set of practices, codes, values that mark a particular nation or group, or the sum of the nation's most highly thought of works of literature, art, music, and so on. Culture and language combine to what is sometimes called discourse. That means ways of talking, thinking, and behaving that reflect one's social identity. Additionally, Corsi and Jin in 1999 described three patterns of culture representation in English textbooks. The first one was the source culture, the second one was the target culture, and the last one was the international target cultures. And moving on to the methodology. We conducted this study with EFL teachers in Al Secondary School during the school year 2020-2021. Accordingly, with the aims of this study, the descriptive method seemed to be the appropriate one here to apply. A group of 8 teachers participated in this study, and all of them have a teaching experience varies from 11 to 5 years. So, in order to achieve the previously stated objectives, the teachers were asked to give their opinions about the cultural context presented in textbooks. Also to answer some questions about their appraisement about the different cultural activities used to teach English language and their frequency in their classes. Now, Moving on to the results and discussion. The questions the practitioners were asked were designed with the purpose to know their opinions and views about the current situation in Algeria of teaching English, according to the way national and international culture was represented in the textbooks, and its role in enhancing learners' communicative competence and acquiring language in general. The results obtained showed that the majority of teachers, 80%, see that including cultural elements is somehow necessary for learners to acquire English language. Overall, despite the fact that the majority of them consider integrating cultural aspects such as literature, art, music, or lifestyle into EFL classes and into our textbooks is so important, as they also admit that learners will be more motivated to learn the language. They include very few cultural activities. To conclude, this study was set to investigate the issue of representing English culture in the Algerian EFL textbooks, especially here the textbooks of secondary schools. Since the early 1970s, the broadly held belief among linguists is that it is important to teach the foreign language with its culture, what makes language learners successful in different levels of communication, whether they communicate in real-life conversations or in academic conversations. The observation of the teacher's opinion indicated that the representation of culture may be limited in our textbooks. Nonetheless, they consider cultural aspects in textbooks as a source of motivation to learn English appropriately. Although currently textbooks may not include the enough amount of them, and they are more considerable with the linguistic features of the target language. Thank you for your kind attention.